Hi, my name is Karthik from Design School by Wpalgoridm.com, and in this tutorial, I'll teach you the basics of Oxygen Builder, a very powerful and blazing fast builder for WordPress, and give you a solid foundation of it so you can start working with it right away. Now, if you take a look at the pricing of Oxygen Builder, they don't charge you per website or per year. This is a lifetime subscription, so you just pay once as of now, but they're planning to switch it to the subscription model real soon. So now is the best time to get it, and it is highly powerful, if not more powerful than Elementor. And basically you have 3 licenses. The basic one gives you all the basic features, and WooCommerce, well, if you want to build stores with Oxygen, this is for you. And the ultimate one has all the features in it. So again, if you're going for it, I recommend going for the ultimate one because it's just one-time payment. It's totally up to you. And they also have 60-day money-back guarantee. So that's a cool thing. So once you purchase Oxygen, you can go to your dashboard and click on downloads. And a quick disclosure here, I did reach out to Oxygen team and they provided me with the ultimate package. I was not paid to make this tutorial. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and download the Oxygen plugin. Click on the latest version available and that will download the plugin. Now there's also 2 other plugins called Oxygen Gutenberg integration and WooCommerce integration. Again, those are plugins or add-ons for Oxygen that will make it work with Gutenberg and WooCommerce. We'll discuss that in future tutorials, but for now, let's download it. You can close this off. Go to plugins, click on add new and upload the plugin that you've just downloaded from Oxygen. And it is this one. Just click on upload, click on install now, click on activate plugin. And from here, if it asks for the license key, just copy the license key from your Oxygen dashboard and paste it into this, and that should totally activate the plugin. You then have a new dashboard entry called Oxygen. You can click on that. And I do have set it up earlier. That's why it's showing me this. But if yours is a new install, it'll ask you to choose a blank install or install a website. Just choose blank install because I want you to understand basics of Oxygen. So click on blank install. Now the settings or the options in Oxygen are very minimal. When you click on home, you'll have these links. You don't have to worry about any of them. Again, if you want a complete website, just click on install a website. It'll basically import the header design, footer design, and all the designs from the pre-built sets. So you don't have to build anything from the scratch. And you can do this at any time, so it doesn't matter. And these are the websites that they have. You can click to view the demo of how it looks. And if you're happy with this demo, so this is all that will be imported into Oxygen Builder. You can simply click on install. I'm not going to do that for now. So I'll click on go back. Let's start with settings. You can click on settings. You can set a history limit. So maybe you can say like 50, 60 or something. But again, you don't have to worry about any of these. Just check this enable selected detector option. And rest all you can leave at the default. Click on save changes. Client control, if you want to limit access to any of these users. So for editor, by default, all of them don't have access to Oxygen, but again, you can grant them access. If you want to hide Oxygen on any of these post types, let's say you don't want Oxygen to show up on post, you can click this and save changes, but we'll leave everything at the default. When you click on SVG sets, you can upload your own custom icon file. We'll get to that in a bit. Typekit is where you can put in a API token, and all the Adobe fonts that you pick with that token will be imported to your Oxygen Builder. You can actually click on license. If for some reason the license didn't get added, you can paste your license key here and click on Oxygen. Now, if you have separate license for separate plugins, just put all of them and click on submit. And then there's an option called CSS cache. Just enable this and leave everything again at the default. You can click on bloat eliminator. Just check these options. The first one, the second one. And if you're not embedding any of the YouTube videos or tweets or anything, you can also check this one. But again, we'll leave it at the default. You can also disable Google Fonts and download Google Fonts on your own and upload it into custom fonts. But in this tutorial, I'm not going to do that. So I'll just click on Save Changes. These are some basic options. You can totally skip them. Now let's take a look at the templates section. I'll click on templates and that will take us to the screen. Well, as we did blank install, nothing is set up. Well, templates in Oxygen are different than templates in Elementor or even BricsBuilder. They're basically the parts of your website. So templates control your header design, your footer design, the page design itself, and basically any of the archive designs as well. So templates are not the things that you typically expect from Elementor. They're totally the theme builder templates in Oxygen, you can say. Anyway, if we go to the front end of the site, I'll open it in a new link. Remember, we did a blank install, so no template is installed, nothing is configured. This is how the front end of our website looks like. Well, why is that so? Again, this page was designed with BricsBuilder, so that's quite expected. But even our WordPress menu is totally skewed. And why is that so? Well, if you go to the Appearance tab and click on Themes under your website, all the themes are basically grayed out. And you can read here that Oxygen entirely disables WordPress theme system. So it's just Oxygen that loads and controls every part of your website using the templating system that you do. So it's really important to set up a base template that will give us a header, content area to work with, and also a footer. So let's do that first. Again, click on Oxygen, go to templates, click on Add New. I'll call it main template. You can also call it base template. Let's call it base. Click on Publish. Once you publish the page, you'll see this Edit with Oxygen button. Now, before you click that, you have to click on the other drop down and click on Catch All. Remember, we are designing a base design that defines our header, the main content, and the footer. And that's what this Catch All does. You can design different templates for the page itself, 404 page, search results page, blog page, even for the front page. For archives, you can define different templates. But for now, just click on Other, click on Catch All, and that is going to make this template a default template. And what is this priority? Let's say you have two templates or two base templates, maybe base 1 and base 2. The priority of this is 1, and for the new one, you gave priority of 1 or 2. So the template with highest priority will be applied to the base design. That's what this priority is. The same applies to any of the templates. Anyway, I'll click on Catch All. I'll click on Update. And once the settings are saved, you'll see this Edit with Oxygen button. I'll click on Edit with Oxygen button. This opens up the Oxygen interface. And this is the same interface when you're designing a template, a page, a post, or even a custom post type. And it's very minimal. You have a left sidebar, a top bar, and when you click on it, it pops up a structure that shows all the elements on your page. We'll get to the interface and the basics in a bit, but let's first set our base template. So for any website, we need a header, then content area and a footer. So let's set that up quite quickly in here. So click on this Add Element button. Let's use one of the default elements. I'll click on Design Sets. I'll click on this template system. Go to Section and Elements, click on it, scroll all the way down. And when you hover over header, these are the headers. You can actually click to apply it or put it. And that becomes our header. I'll click on the plus button. I'll click on the widgets button, or you can click on this arrow to go all the way back. You can click on basics. Now I'll click on inner content. Again, this is the page content that we need for designing any kind of website. And now we have the header. We have the page content. You can click on the structure button to view the structure. Don't worry, we'll get to these panels in a bit. But for now, let's quickly set up our base template. So we have our inner content. Let's also add a footer. Again, I'll use a pre-built footer. Click on library, design sets, and maybe footer from the same kind of design. Hover over to footer, and I'll just click on this footer. That puts footer. Now we have a header, inner content area, and a footer. So I'll click on the save changes button or the floppy disk button. That will save our base template. You can click on this button that you can exit to WP admin or frontend. I'll click on frontend, and this is how our website looks like. So if I click on the icon, that takes us to the home page. And now this is how the design looks like. Remember earlier it was totally messed up, but now it's looking damn good. We'll design headers, footers, and everything in future tutorials. But now that we've set up a base template for a proper functioning of our website, let's actually go and design a page and learn the basics of Oxygen Builder. So I'll go to the dashboard, click on pages. I'll click on add new. Let's give it a title. Once you give it a title, click on publish and publish this page. As you can see, once the page is published, you can automatically see that our base template is applied to this page. So our header will be loaded on the page, our footer will be loaded, and we'll also have the main content area to edit. If you want, you can apply another base template, but again, that is already applied. So let's click on edit with Oxygen and let's understand the interface of Oxygen. Now, it's pretty minimal and I really like this interface. Now on the left hand side at the top, you have this plus button that shows or hides the element, and these are the elements that you can click to add to your design. You can click on the plus button and click to add any of the elements into the button, and that's what this is. And these are basically how your designs would look on different devices. This is on mobiles, this is on tablets, and for different widths you see the preview in here. On the right hand side in the top bar, you have undo and redo buttons. You also have the structure panel, and when you click on it, it shows all the elements on your page or in your design. And you can also expand a section by clicking this button, and you can click this to expand all the sections or collapse all the sections in the structure panel. You can also click on this eye icon to hide it from the design. Click to show it again. You can click this trash icon to delete any element. And when you click on it, you can do the same for the heading element as well. You can click on the pencil icon for few other options. You can export it, make this as a reusable template. You can also duplicate it by clicking this, and you can wrap it in div. And when you do that, it creates a div. Again, it's a basic element, and it puts this element into that div. See that? Let me undo. Let me redo. And that heading is now in that. You can click on expand all to see all of it in action. Click to remove all of it. Again, click on the pencil icon. You can also rename this. You can maybe click on this section, click on the pencil icon and rename it to hero section, just like that. So that is the structure panel. Again, you can click on the pencil icon to duplicate this section, or you can trash this like so. So that is the structure panel, and this is the history. This shows what you have done on this page so far, and you can click to go to any point in time. So this was the initial state, and this is how it looks right now. So that is history. You can click to restore it to any point in time. You have settings option. When you click on it, click on settings. This will be shown. So you can go to page level settings. Things like you can set page width. You can also set an overlay header, which we'll discuss in future tutorials. You can also add JavaScript and animate on scroll. You can click on this, and you can also have few settings for the editor, and you can also define your global styles, things such as your colors, fonts that you define here, right? We'll get to that in a bit. These are basically various CSS selectors. So that will be shown by clicking on this selected panel, and you can click this to bring the panel back. You can minimize the left panel by clicking this hide sidebar, and you can also minimize this by clicking the structure icon, and you can actually click on this to save all your designs. Click this to go to WP admin, which is your WordPress dashboard, or even the front end to preview the page in action. Now let's bring these two structures or panels back. So I'll remove this, and right on the structure, you see, we just see the inner content element. Why do we not see the header, footer, or basically the base template? Since we already applied the base template to this page, we are now editing just the inner content, and that's why it's just showing inner content in the structure. So whatever changes we are making to this design is basically being applied to the inner content element and not this. Now if you click on this, it shows the template, and you can click on open and edit this template, but we'll stick to editing the page for now. So I'll click on this plus button. Now before we do anything on our website, even before building our first section, click on the settings cog, and under global settings or global styles, we need to add our colors and fonts. So I'll click on colors, and you see there are two defined color sets. You can also add your custom one by clicking here, giving it a name. Click on add, and within here you can add the colors you want. If you want to remove a palette, click on this trash icon, and that palette is gone. Now let's fill colors into the global color palette. I'll click on colors, click on add color, and we'll discuss in a separate tutorial on how to pick colors and fonts. But for now, I'll just go to adobe.com and pick this color palette. There are tons of palettes. You can just pick one of them and load it up. I'll click to copy this color value or hex code. Just give it a name. I'll call it primary. You can simply click here and paste the hex code and click on add color. That color is added. I'll do the same. I'll call this secondary. You can also click here to pick your own color like so. We'll just copy and paste the hex codes from Adobe. I'll click this, paste, add color. Let's call this accent color, and let's paste the value from here. Click on add color. Let's also pick this one. Maybe I can call it accent. Paste its value, click on add color, and the last color is this one. Click on add color. I'll call it accent 3. You can call it, give it any name. I'll just paste this. Yeah, so that is our color palette. In addition to the primary colors or the color palette, I'll also add some text colors, and for that I'll just use the color picker. So I'll pick a white color for text. I'll click on add color, and let's call it text 2, and maybe slightly grayish color for text, something like that would be fine. Click on add color. I'll also add a dark color for text, and even for backgrounds we can use this dark grayish color. So this is pure black color. Let's also call it BG color, or I'll call it BG, which stands for background. Click on this. Let's call it BG2, and let's pick a slighter version of that, maybe something in that range, and click on add color. Now that is a complete color palette. We are done with colors. Now let's move on to the next one. I'll click here to go back, and we'll be using the global colors for most of the elements on the page. Let's do the same for fonts. Now once you pick colors, you can click here to go back to global styles, click to go to all settings, click here to go to the topmost settings page. Again, let's click on global styles, click on fonts, and it'll ask you to pick a text font which will be used for your body copy, and display font which will be used for your heading. Now you can simply go and do a quick Google search, maybe depending on the type of website. We'll discuss how to pick fonts in a separate tutorial, but for now we'll just use one of the combinations. As you can see, there are tons of font combinations, and these are all Google fonts which are already built or which can be picked from Oxygen Builder itself. I think I'll go with this combination, which is Archivo and Open Sans. So let's do that. Text font, let's leave it at Open Sans. And here you can search for the font And yeah, let's go. If a font has varying weights, you can click on this and choose the weights. And you can also add additional fonts, but it's always recommended to not have more than 2 fonts on your website. That way it's good for performance and it also gives good visual contrast. I'll click on add font and let's call it hero heading. Click on OK. And now let's pick Archivo here as well. Under weight, I'll pick 900, which will be really thick for Archivo. And now we can go back. Any time you go to the fonts, you see all of this in action. And if you want to add another font, just click on plus add font. But again, we'll leave that at there. Now we'll click on headings. We'll fill all these font sizes and values. Let's do that. And in order to pick and assist you with picking the heading, I'll click on this plus button. Click on the heading. So that gets added. And when this heading is highlighted, when you click on it, you see this button. Just duplicate it till you have 6 of them. I'll click on the second one, click on tag and change it to H2. Click on this, change the tag to H3. Click on this, change it to H4. This one to 5 and 6 as well, right? Now, in addition to the headings, I'll also click on the text and that adds this body text that will give us a preview of the text. Now, let's click on body text. And how do you pick font sizes for your body text and even for all these headings? Well, go to a website called typescale.com. Here you can enter the base size of your font, maybe 18 pixels if you want your body copy to have 18 pixel size. And from here you can pick the scale. For a typical blog, major third or minor third is recommended. For marketing websites, you'd go with scales like really huge because you want the headings to really stand out. Or for designer websites, maybe you can go with something like augmented fourth. But let's settle with major third for now. And once you enter the scale and the base size, it gives you the values that you can use for your H6 all the way up to H1. We'll also click on this plus button, add couple of values. So 18 pixels is our base size. So I'll click here. I'll click on global styles, click on body text. Let's change the base size to 18 pixels. And that's reflected in the body text here. Font weight, you can leave it at the default. Line height, I would recommend keeping it at the default. And color, you can pick from any of the global colors. Let's go back and let's do one by one for our heading, starting with H6. So for H6, we have a value of 22.5 pixels. Let's make it 23. And let's fill in the value here, 23 pixels. And we want the font weight for H6 to be lighter, maybe around 400 or something. And you see that that's looking good. Let's change the color of H6. Maybe we'll leave the color there. Let's change the line height to 1.3 or something. Doesn't matter. Let's do the same for H5. That is 28.13 pixels. Let's do 28 here. And weight, I'll pick around 500. Now, if your font supports font weight, it's a better idea to also pick increasing weights for your headings. Again, line height, you can keep it at 1.3. And color, you can just leave it at the default or pick your color. I'll fill all the values for H4 all the way up to H1. So I've picked colors, font sizes, and font weights for all my headings. So that's looking good. I'll go back, and this is how all of them will look together when stacked on one another. And for body text, we pick a neutral color because it should be easier on the eyes. You can do the same for links. You can pick a normal color and so on. But again, you get the gist. You define colors and fonts and use them all the way across. And you can click on this width and breakpoint. You can change the desktop width from this to your value, but I recommend leaving it at the default and see how it turns out. You can also click on sections and columns and change the default padding. You can change the section basic padding to any value for the top, left, right, and values, but again, just leave them at the default. I think they're good with their default values. And here you have options to animate on scroll, but again, we'll leave these for now. And let's say you just want to reset all of this. There's a button to do that. You can click that to reset all of your global styles. So all your colors, fonts, everything will be restored to the default values. So no issues with that. Anyway, so that's global styles. Once we are done with global styles, let's start understanding the page. So I'll click on the structure panel. It shows all my headings. Now I'll get rid of this and let's understand the basics. So keep this structure tab open so that we understand what's going on. And let's click on the plus element that shows all the elements that you can add. You can also click these panels to show different elements that you can add to the design. So if you make a section reusable, all your reusable elements will be shown here. But if you click on basics, you can also search for your component such as button and so on. If you delete that, all the elements will be shown. So sections and divs are the fundamental building blocks of Oxygen. When I click on a section, you see that gets added there. And if I want to add a new section, click on the plus button, click on section. Now, when you click on any element in Oxygen, contextual options show up in the left. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be a section, div, or even a widget element. So when I click on a section, it shows me this option. So I can show or hide this element based on advanced conditions. We'll get to that in future tutorials. And also selectors, we'll get to that in future tutorials. This is a link wrapper. And when you click on that, if I remove this, if you observe on the right hand side, the section will be put in a link. You can click on this plus to expand it. We can see our section is now within this link wrapper, and this whole of this section will be clickable. So you can enter any link in here, or you can click on dynamic data and change it to any of the links you want. But I don't want that. I'll undo that. Let's just have plain sections and understand this. You can also click on a section and click this to duplicate this section. I'll click the third section, click this button to duplicate it, or you can click this trash icon to delete a section. It can also be done from here. So you can click on the pencil icon to duplicate it. You can also rename this section. In fact, let's call this first section so we understand what's going on. I'll rename this to second section, and similarly you can rename this to third section. And you can actually click on this eye icon to show or hide that particular element. It can be a section, it can be anything. Now there's nothing within this section, so I'll click on the first section again to select it. You can give it a background color. Maybe you can give it this global color. Always use global colors when you're doing something with your elements. Again, you can click on the plus button. So what are the elements that you can add? You can add divs within a section. You can add columns within a section, or you can directly add headings into section. So when I clicked on the first section, that is selected. Now I can click on the heading element, and the heading element gets added into the section. Now I can double click this and edit the text. Something like that. And also notice whenever text element is selected, you get the contextual options like that. You can make it bold, you can make it italic, you can make it underlined. You can actually select a part of text and underline that. If your font supports, you can also do strike through. You can also add a link to any word or basically a collection of words by selecting the word, clicking on the link and just adding the URL. I'm not gonna do that. You can undo or redo formatting changes to the heading element or the text element by clicking these buttons. See that? And let's say you want to style this particular word separately. So you see this as in brackets, it's called span. When you click on that, it puts this heading element into a special block. Now you can style this heading separately from other heading elements, or you can style this text separately from the rest of the text. So with the span selected automatically, I can click on text color and I can give it another color just like that. Not just text color, you can also change font size like so. You can maybe have a bigger font size, something like that, totally up to you. So basically when you do span wrapping, it lets you style the elements that you wrap in separately. You can click here to undo all the changes. You do that. Let's have our plain text. And once you do any formatting to the text, you can also use this button to remove the formatting. And once you're done with the things, you can click on done. Hit space here. You can also insert dynamic data and it pulls the data from your website. So you can add post title, click on insert. See, it basically shows the name of this page. This is the name of this page that you can see here, and it automatically puts that. That is dynamic data. But we'll discuss about dynamic data in detail. So that is how you add elements in Oxygen. Let's also change the heading tag from H1 to H2. I think it looks much better now. Let's click on another element. Let's add some text into it. And you can click on the left hand side. Again, contextual options. The similar options pop up for the text element. Let's change the content. So something like that. You can just change the font family if you want. But again, we gave global styles. And if you still want to override that, you can actually do it from here. But again, I'll undo that because I want to use my global fonts. The same applies to color as well. If you want to change it to a separate color, you can change it from here. But again, we'll just use the global colors, or the global colors, and all the font styles will automatically be applied. Some elements within the first section, you can actually collapse all by clicking this collapse all. You can just expand this by clicking this plus button to see everything within the... Now I switched from local website to a live website, and whenever you click on an element within a section or anything, you see this breadcrumb, and when you click on the section, you're now editing the section. So that's a cool thing. Now the space within this section is looking a bit cramped, and you can always expand all or collapse all within the structure. Or if you just want to expand this section, I can simply click to expand the first section. So when I hover over the section, I can click and add breathing space or padding. So padding is the space within an element. I can do the same. When I hover over this, I can click and drag it to add some padding. So we just added some breathing space with above and below this section to make this text look good. Now we can do the same on left and right as well. We'll get to that in a bit. But again, padding is the space inside the element, and margin is the space outside the element that separates it from other elements. So you can actually click on advanced, and these options are the same for any element in Oxygen. It can be a section, div, and even when I click on heading element and go to advanced, these options are the same. Again, I'll click on the section. To select the section, go to advanced. Let's start with size and spacing. Now I can also double click to reset the padding, click and add it again, and that value is shown. You can just double click, or I can add a padding. Always add values in the multiples of 6. So let's add 64 pixels padding value and click on apply all, and top, left, right, and even bottom padding get this. Now you can also change the width, but recommend putting it at 100%. You can change it to 80% as well. But again, just leave it at the default. Minimum width and maximum width, just leave it. You can give a minimum height to a section, maybe around 500 pixels or something. So your section is looking good like that. And I think it's a bit buggy. It's supposed to show the margin controls for the section as well. For some reason, it's not showing. But again, I think it's a little bit of a bug. You'll also have margin controls here. And in a similar way, you added padding, which is the space within. You can also separate this section with the second section. So that is a margin control. Hopefully it shows up here, size and spacing. Even here, margin is missing. It's a bug for sure, but I hope it gets fixed. Now, with this section selected, let's also add a button. And the button gets added like so. So that is how you add content within a section, right? So you can click on the button and set some styles. I just chose a button color, the text color within the button, and the hover color of the button. You can also do that in global styles. Anyway, you can change the link by manually pasting the URL here, or click on set. Just paste the link here, or I'll just pick a page from here, click on add link. You can also choose to open it in the same page or in a new page, or so on, right? Here you can change the text of the button. You can say visit us. We can also change the type of button here. So this is how it looks. Again, text size and everything, you can set it in global styles and leave it at the default. Now, if I want to select the section again, I can click on the plus button. Now, if we want to add spacing between the first heading, second heading, and the button, I can actually click on the second heading, go to advanced, click on size and spacing. You now see the margin. Technically, we should be able to see that in the section as well. But anyway, I'll click here. Let's add about a 48 pixel margin, and we just need a margin below this heading text or below this text. We don't need margin above. So I'll click on this and just add 48 pixel. Just like that, margin is added. If you think that's too much, just change it to 24. I think that looks good. I'll click on the first heading, go to advanced, click on size and spacing, and another 24 pixels of bottom margin. If you think that's too much, maybe 8 pixels is also fine. Even for this, you can just change it to whatever value you want. I think 8 pixels is totally fine. So yeah, that's how you add margin spacing around the elements. Now we'll be talking about advanced in a bit. Don't worry about that. But this is how you add section, and within the section, you just add the elements you want, right? That's pretty basic section. Now, if I want to select the section again, I can select any of the elements or click on the section here or click on the section in the structure panel. Now we have options to choose child element layout. By default, it's vertical. So that's why when I click on vertical, nothing really happens. And this is called a Flexbox container. Now watch what happens when I click horizontal. All our elements are positioned horizontally, right? Our heading, our text, and even our button. Now you can choose to put it wherever you want. You can just change the vertical alignment once you pick the actual flow of the design. And you can choose a few other options here. You can space them around and so on. Let's choose vertical. You can space them around like so, or you can stretch them like that. But I think this looks better, so we'll settle with that. And there's something called grid. Now you can divide your elements into grids. You don't see them here, but you can define the number of columns. So let's say I just want 2 columns, and you can specify minimum width, but again, I recommend leaving it at the default. You can also change the horizontal alignment of the elements within the column, and you see what happens to your design when you do that. You can also explicitly define number of rows. So you can maybe say 2, 1, it doesn't matter. So if you have 3 columns, it just creates 1 row. Don't worry much about it for now. Just pick vertical or horizontal for your design. And this is the Flexbox container. We'll discuss about grids in future tutorials. So that's what this child element layout does. It just spaces and structures the elements within your grid or within your section. Now I'll click on the second section. I'll give it a different background just to distinguish it from the first section. So I'll give it this purple background, or let's actually give it this brown background. Totally up to us. I think purple looks better. Okay, we'll go with this eggplant color, whatever you call it. You can directly add elements within a section. Well, this is some basic section, right? It's not any fancy section. I'll click on the second section, click on the plus button, and you can also add columns within a section. So let's say you just want 2 pieces of content, one with some text and the second one with images. You can actually click on the second section, click on columns, and choose the number of columns. I just want 2 columns, and it creates 2 columns. And you can see that in here. When I click on the second section, and if I expand it, you can see the columns, and basically it creates columns of divs, right? It then puts two divs within this section. So I'll choose the first div. I'll click on the plus button here and click here to add the heading text. Let's change that to H4. So this is the first div, and within that it's adding the content. Let's also add a bit of text in here. That is looking good. Let's also add a button. That is also looking good. Now I'll click on the second div And I'll click on the plus button again, and let's add an image. Just like that, it adds an image. On media, let's upload an image. You can also upload files from your computer, but I'm gonna pick up an image that's already available. So just like that, we've added the image in here. So we have a second section with columns, and within each column we put some content. So that is another way to design your elements. I'll click on the section, go to advanced, size and spacing. Let's also give it a minimum height of 600 pixels or so. We gave this 500 pixels, maybe 600 pixels. Let's also change this, or let's keep it at page width, because we want it to be constrained. And I think if you limit it to that width, it looks better. Let's also add margin to it, or padding to it. Again, the margin element is gone. I think it's a bug. Let's do 48 pixel. I'll click on apply all. That puts 48 pixels all around. Or let's do 64 pixels and click on apply all. So 64 all around. Since we have columns, they're automatically formatted and displayed properly. But let's say I just want to pull all of these elements onto the center. I can actually click on div, and the properties for div and section are essentially the same. So when I select the first div that has this elements, or you can click on the element and click on div. So this div is selected. Div is again another container. Let's align it onto the center horizontally. You can also do it on the vertical axis. You can also stretch it like that. And totally with just clicks of a button, we are essentially changing it. You can also change the direction of the elements to horizontal, but you see that looks horrible. Let's keep it at vertical and play with these options till you get the design that you get. You can also put it at the top, at the middle. You can space around, you can space between, and see how the elements are aligned based on that, something like that. So that's how you play with these options. These are again Flexbox grid options. You can also define a gap of 48 pixels between the elements, no matter which direction you choose. And you can also display them in a grid. You can define the number of columns. You can see the first column has these two elements, the second column has this. But again, we'll save it for a more advanced course. You can click it to disable that. I think this looks better. Totally up to you. You can choose the way you want to align this. Now let's go to the third section and let's give it a background. Maybe something intense this time. And in here, instead of adding text elements or columns, you can do all of them together. So first I'll add, I don't know, maybe a div right here. So within the third section, we have a div. I'll click on this pencil icon. I'll duplicate it 4 times to get 4 divs. We'll give all the 4 divs a background color. I'll click on this, go to primary. I'll give this div yellow background color. Okay. So we have 4 divs within this, and divs are also containers. Let's start playing with the values here. So vertical alignment is the basic. Let's also add a padding by going to size and spacing. Let's add a padding within the third section. Go to advanced. Maybe around 48 pixels. And I'll click on apply all. Yeah. Let's also give a minimum height of 500 pixels or 600 pixels. Totally fine. This is just a minimum height. You can also limit the maximum height, but as you add content and as they take up space, these boxes are stretched automatically. So let's click on primary. Let's start playing with these options. So once you pick horizontal layout, this is how all the elements or divs within the section are placed. So I'll click on this again. And you can see how we can change the vertical alignment of the divs and how the divs are affected based on these options. And again, within these divs, we can place our content. If I select this yellow div, click on the plus button, I can add a heading element just like that. Now it's too big. Let's change it to H6. And based on the content size, the box also changes its shape and size. That's why they're called flex boxes or flexible boxes. Anyway, I'll click on the section. You can also space them around like so and see how that's affecting each of the div. Within this, I can actually click on plus button. I can put another image and let's choose an image. I'll pick this image, choose that. Now let's change the alignment of the third section vertically, and now you see the image and see how that changes the text box value and also this. So basically you play with these options to get the design you want. In addition to the divs, you can also add columns to the existing section. So I click on the section, click on the plus button, let's add columns, and see that you can also pick the number of columns here. And in addition to the divs, columns block is also added, and that puts 2 more divs in. So you can put more content within these divs. You can click on plus, let's drag or click on heading element in here. That is our heading element. And within this div, you can put any content. So within every div or a section, you can just add any elements, and you can do hybrid layouts by having divs, columns, or both of them within the section. That's what I wanted to explain in this. And again, you can play with the horizontal alignment and vertical alignment based on your design requirement. And that's how you make complex layouts in your website. So I'll click on the first section. With that selected, let's study the advanced tab, which is basically common for a section or a div, right? All the options are same. So I'll explain that for a section. It applies for div as well. So from here, you have the background tab, where you can obviously pick your background color. Again, use global colors while picking your background color. And you can also pick your background image. You can click on browse. You can upload files from your computer or just browse one of the uploaded images. Let's make this. I already have an image that we can use as a background image. I'll click on select image. Now that becomes our background image. Now you can also add an overlay if you think this image is dominating the content within. Let's again add a global color, this brownish color, or let's add this purple as the overlay color. Now when we add the overlay color, we do not see anything. So you can actually click and drag this transparency slider till you can actually see the content within and also see the background image. So just reach the sweet spot and just leave it at there. Change the image size from auto to cover to contain and manual. And you can see when you change the image background size, it's repeating itself, right? So you can actually prevent that by doing so. And when the image is automatically set to a value, the rest is basically the background color that you set. So you can use background size and background repeat to fine tune your background image and how you want your background image to look. You can also specify a manual size for the background image. Again, choosing no repeat is a good thing. But if you have something like a pattern, you can just choose repeat and that pattern is applied across your background. Totally up to you on how you use it. You can choose fixed or scroll. When you choose fixed, this is the effect. When you choose scroll, your background scrolls away with the scrolling of the user. Or if you choose fixed, it has this neat parallax effect. You can also choose background blend mode. So all your layers will be blended together by using this blend mode. Just leave it at normal if you don't like it. You can also upload a video as a background, maybe a YouTube video or something. You can also choose to hide that for a particular width. And for even videos, you can have an overlay, just like you had with images. Then you have gradients. Let's pick a linear gradient. There are 2 types of gradients actually, linear and radial. Let's pick radial or linear and let's add an angle of 45. Click on add color. And the first color, I'll pick this one. Let's click on add color again and I'll pick, you can also give a size like that. So based on these values, your gradient will be changed. Or if you want it to be uniformly applied, just leave this. You can also change it from linear to radial. and you can play with these values to get the gradient that you really like. I'll actually click this and actually pick a lighter color. You can also remove a gradient by just deleting these options. It will revert back to the original options of that. And under size and spacing, you have padding. So the space within a container. Again, I'll click on the background. So size and spacing, basically padding, and it should also show margin. You can define width, minimum width. Again, for a section or anything, just leave this at their default values. Maybe just add minimum height. If you want the section to be stretched full width, you can just do that. But again, I recommend leaving it at page width. That's what size and spacing is. Now under layout, you have the same options that you have in primary, but even in more detail. So I'll click on layout. So we'll again use the third section for the demo. I'll change the color from this to white. Now you see it. Now I'll click on this section or the third section, go to advanced, and when we click on layout, Flexbox is defined, and when you uncheck that, Flexbox is not selected. You can choose column where elements are stacked on top of one another, or row where elements are stacked side by side like this. You can also reverse the order in which they are stacked for a column or a row. If you check this box, you can do inline flex, you can do block. Basically, these are different options, but the standard options are flex and grid. So always pick either of these. Although you have more flexibility with the design display options, just pick flex or grid, and that way your website will automatically look good. And when you pick flex, like I explained earlier, you can define a gap between the elements, maybe 48 pixels. You see the gap being applied no matter what the direction is. If it's column or a row, the gap will be applied. If you don't want any gap, just remove that. But again, use that in 24 pixel gap. You can put the elements at the start or center, flex end or stretch. Now, why are only these containers being stretched and not this one? Well, that's because this already has the maximum height. That's why it's not stretching this, but the elements that can be stretched are being stretched. So these options will basically vary with the content that you have within the divs or within the elements, right? And again, if you click on stretch, this is how it looks. You see how that affects. So when there's enough space, these options will basically change the designs. And when you do wrap, you can see that this text is pushed to the next row. And if you do no wrap, all of them are put side by side. You can also change the align content. Again, this is depending on the space. So based on the different elements or different options you pick, your elements will be resized depending on that. I'll click this, go back, and that's layout. Within typography, you can just choose the font colors and override the global styles from here. Let's add a bit of text and you'll see that. See, this text actually, text color is overridden with this color that we chose here. So that's what typography is, and you can just override all the default values. You can make the font really big, and let's also change the color. Something like that, totally up to us, right? You can also change the text alignment values in here and all that. So typography, within this section, you can override the global values. That's what this is. And you can click on border. You can choose all the borders and you can give borders a color. Let's use this purple color for now. And let's specify a 5 or 3 pixel border. You can choose none and the border doesn't show up. You can choose dashed. You can choose dotted. See the border around. If you don't see it clearly, just minimize this, and you see the border around the section. Again, depending on all this, you can also unset all the borders by clicking this one. So we have a solid border around the section. You can also have a border radius, maybe around, I don't know, maybe 32 pixels or something. And that makes this section a rounded rectangle like so. The more the border radius, the curvier the section gets. See this now, section? Now, even if you unset all the borders, the border radius is still applied. If you have like 100 or something, you can see how that affects the section. So that's borders. And again, this applies to divs and even the elements, but use it on divs. And then you have some effects to animate this element on scroll. And this is how the element will show up when the user is scrolling. Again, you can enable any of them and just have a ton of options. You can also change the opacity of the section by doing so. But again, why would you have multiple sections? Maybe then, but otherwise you wouldn't tinker with that. And these are some special properties which we'll discuss in future tutorials. Then you have option to put custom CSS within this section, and JavaScript and some custom attributes. So that is a brief introduction to Oxygen Builder, and that's how you build all the things with Oxygen. And if at any time you want to change the property, like I said, this section is looking too big, so I can go here and can go on size and spacing, 300 pixel, and so on. And this is how you work with Oxygen. And once you're done editing your Oxygen design, click on Save Changes. See the settings cog animation. Once that is done, you can exit to dashboard. You design your templates, such as your base template or basically your archive templates and all that in a similar fashion. The principles are simple, but you definitely use some dynamic elements to pull dynamic data. That is a brief introduction to Oxygen, and click on the plus button and explore all the different kinds of elements and build few pages with Oxygen, some test pages with Oxygen, and see how they look. You can also pull sliders, but we'll be discussing more about Oxygen in future tutorials. So I'll see you in the next one. Let me know about what you feel and think.